And there's intimacy on the radio, and there's naturalness on the radio that can never be replicated on TV. The marvelous resurgence of radio as a political force in this country.
News-related radio programming is evolving.
There's a huge hole in our dialogue that can be filled by the synthesis of traditional radio and the freedom that comes from a live podcast. You're about to experience Cowboy State Politics live. Here we go. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to another incredible Friday from high above all the puerile and bombastic twits in the Wyoming mainstream media. This is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics Studio in Sheridan, Wyoming. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. Happy Friday. It's Open Line Friday. That's right, my friends. It's Open Line Friday on Cowboy State Politics. The phone number, if you want to be part of the program, is 307-374-8989. 307-374-8989 if you want to be part of the program. We're broadcasting to you from the Independence Network, from YouTube, Facebook, X, and now on Rumble. I know, it's almost like I'm omnipresent everywhere, but, you got to get the information out there somewhere. So if you want to call and be part of the program, again, the phone number is 307-374-8989. The phone lines are open, and here's how it works on Open Line Friday. Normally during the week, you have to talk about what I want to talk about. And if I'm not really in the mood to talk about whatever you want to talk about during the week, well, then I'm just not going to answer your phone call. Or I'm going to say, hey, that's great, but maybe we should talk about this. But anyway, on Friday, it's entirely up to you. Whatever you want to talk about on the program, we're going to talk about it. That's why they call it Open Line Friday. So if you want to be part of the program, the number is 307-374-8989. We begin this morning with the Sheridan Press. Now, I've got to come up with a new name for them. Because the Sheridan Press just doesn't work. I mean, we have the Cow Pie, the Pravda on the Platte, Wyopile, the Wyoming Turkey Vulture. So, for as partisan as the Wyoming or the Sheridan Press is, I've got to come up with a new name for them. But it's not the Sheridan Press really that I'm referring to today. It's our good pal Shane Rader. Shane Rader, my good friend. Unfortunately, he did win a seat on the Sheridan County School District number 2 school board. All right, we can't win them all. I really wish that he would have gotten beaten. And there for a while during the election, or election night Tuesday, it was looking like he was going down in flames. But at the end, some final couple of precincts came in, and he made it through the election. So that's too bad. But he's written an op-ed or a letter to the editor, and he says that everything I say on Cowboy State Politics is a bunch of falsehoods. All of it. I intentionally mislead voters, and and if it's a local issue, well, then I just mislead people and I don't tell people the truth. And then he goes on to try to claim that he did allow public comment before he passed a $54 million budget. And, well, first of all, that's not true. He didn't. The reason I know that is I have a copy of the audio. Now, when he did allow public comment was after the budget was passed. So the public really didn't have any say, at least in that meeting. They didn't have any way to oppose the budget. And the school board and Superintendent Stultz Scott Stultz, what an idiot that guy is. But anyway, they didn't even really present a budget. What they presented was a summary of all of the accounts. And there wasn't really a line-by-line budget that was presented. They didn't say how much money was going to this program or that program, and there was no way to determine how much you spent on football pads versus how much you spent on books. There's no way to tell that because they didn't present that to the public. The reason why is it was $54 million, and they didn't want the public nitpicking all of their ideas. Well, anyway, so there's the op-ed in the Sheridan Press, and I will be responding to that probably by Monday. I'll have a response sent to the press. Now, I did talk with the publisher of the Sheridan Press yesterday, had a pleasant conversation, although it's very clear that he is definitely not a conservative and is totally in bed with the Redcoats. But he did say that if everything was factual, as if it's ever not, that he would go ahead and print a response to that idiot Shane Rader. We're going to do that, and I should have the response to the paper, I'm saying probably by Monday. And, of course, on the program, I will go ahead and read my response to Mr. Shane Rader to you. I expect it to be wonderfully sarcastic because that is what Shane Schrader deserves. Now, it's a beautiful thing that he's no longer part of or at least he doesn't have a precinct seat in the Sheridan Republican Party. I beat him by one vote, and I hope he absolutely infuriates him that he lost to me by one vote. But anyway, that's up in the air. And so here we are, Friday after an election. And if you had any doubt that the Democrats were going to start right back in on the Republicans, you'd be right about that because they absolutely have. So yesterday, it was, let's see, let me get back up through the stack of stuff. I've really got to get the printer in the studio fixed. I'm having to read everything on the computer, which is not that big a deal. I have a really big monitor in the studio, but my printer's been down, so I haven't been able to print off anything, which is how I prefer to get the show prep done. Anyway, so we're going to begin with an article entitled Jim Acosta Lectures Trump Voting Latino. Quote, "Do you want to see people in camps? Rounded up and put in camps?" Quote, "Maybe they were just voting on economic issues, but at the end of the day, maybe voting against their own self-interest," a CNN anchor says. CNN anchor Jim Acosta hosted a Hispanic supporter of Donald Trump on his show Thursday to assess the former president's big gains among Latino men. He went on to lecture the man, saying he voted to see people rounded up in camps. Acosta hosted 3 Latinos to assess the trend: the New York Times journalist Lulu Garcia Navarro, League of United Latin American Citizens President Domingo Garcia, and Republican National Hispanic Assembly Vice Chair Luis Figueroa, I guess. He confided in Garcia Navarro while bashing Figueroa, accusing him of voting to put people in camps. Now, let's go ahead and give this a listen. Classic Jim Acosta. I guess the whole unity thing after the election, Biden saying, need to come together and have a peaceful transition of power, and all the kumbaya stuff that was happening yesterday at the White House. I guess that's over now, because here's what Jim Acosta is saying.
Latino men went big for Donald Trump this election. Latino women still favored Kamala Harris, but by smaller margins. Donald Trump, people around him have talked about mass deportations on a scale that we have not seen since the 1950s when Dwight Eisenhower was president. He had a program at that time called, and I'm just saying this is the name of the program, I'm not using this term, but they called it Operation Wetback. And during that program, there were even some U.S. citizens who just looked Latino who were deported at that time. Do you want to see that happen?
President Joe Biden assigned Kamala Harris as the border czar. That's the first thing. She had 3 years.
Luis, I have to fact check you. She was not the border czar, but go ahead. I know what you're saying, but she was.
She was absolutely the border czar. Okay, so Biden didn't use those terms, and actually I think he did, but I can't find the soundbite. Anyway, Kamala Harris was in charge of the border. Remember that big press conference? They were sitting at a table, and Biden was saying, "Oh yeah, well, our vice president is going to be in charge of everything that happens at the border. She's going to be in charge of making sure we get to the bottom, the root of all of these problems." It was Kamala Harris that was out there for 3 years, claiming that the southern border was secure. The border is secure. We don't need a wall. We don't need a vanity project. Kamala Harris absolutely was in charge of the border. But let's let Jim Acosta continue.
It's not made the border, so I want to say we have to have the facts here, and that's factually inaccurate. I'm sorry, and I don't mean to cut you off. I definitely want to have a civil discussion, but my question was whether you wanted to see mass deportations. Do you want to see mass deportations?
So the first thing that we need to do is close the border. More than 10 million people illegally entered the country. They have to be deportation. So there is no other way around. They have to be deportation. They have to be
deportation
we
camps.
have to respect the laws.
I'm not saying
deportation camps.
Do you want to see people in camps rounded up and put in camps?
No.
Isn't that what you voted for?
Whoa!
Isn't that what you voted for? One of the things that I think.
Isn't that what you stop. Isn't that what you voted for? Do you want to see people in camps? I mean, that's what you voted for. You elected the evil Donald Trump, so of course you want to see people rounded up and put in camps, just like Operation Wetback. These people have no shame. We aren't even a week out of the presidential election, and Jim Acosta is already going after Donald Trump. Now, Donald Trump has been very clear that there are going to be deportations under his administration, and frankly, there absolutely ought to be. There are millions upon millions of people that are in this country illegally because of the Biden-Harris administration and all of their policies. Every single one of those people that came across the border illegally is breaking the law. Under any other administration, those folks would be rounded up and deported. They would be put on the first plane to the furthest tip of South America so that it takes them a while to walk all the way back. But absolutely, they should be deported. And for people like Jim Acosta and the American left to say, oh, we have to have amnesty. We have to give these people amnesty, because we have a heart. Don't you have a heart? Why do you hate immigrants? First of all, they're not immigrants. They're illegal aliens. An immigrant is somebody who goes through a legal process to become a citizen of this country. You see, words mean things, my friends.
2 + 2 is 4, not 5 if you want it to be 5. And this is not to be discriminatory. This is to stand up for language. Words mean things.
Words mean things. And when people like Jim Acosta saying, well, we've got all of these, migrants, they're really immigrants. They're not illegal. They're migrants. They're displaced people. Words have meaning. And the reason why people like Jim Acosta never say, well, they're illegal aliens, because that's not what he wants. He wants a permanent constituency of Democrat voters. That's the whole reason why the Biden administration, and frankly, all Democrats, all the radical Democrats in party leadership now, that's why they want an amnesty program, and they want as many people in here as possible, because they believe if they are the ones that create and give them amnesty, then those people would be voting in the 2026 election, which is exactly their plan, to give them an amnesty, to give them the vote, and that way it will forever be a permanent Democrat Party in power in the United States. That is what people like Jim Acosta want. Now, of course, that's not going to happen with Donald Trump in the White House. At the very least, Democrats will have to wait 4 years. And secondly, how dare Jim Acosta have a guest on his program and then accuse him of voting for immigrant camps? Well, that's what you voted for, isn't it? This is the state of the media. Now, let's just talk about the media, for example, since we're on a live talk show. And and by the way, it is Open Line Friday. So if you want to chime in on illegal immigration, go ahead and give me a call. It's 307-374-8989, or anything else you want to talk about, because it is Open Line Friday. But anyway, it is amazing to watch the media. Now, directly after the election, I'm sure you've seen the story of Joe Scarborough not knowing what a thing of butter costs. And he goes off yesterday and says, well, I was amazed that the cost of butter was $3. What an outrageous price increase. And his wife, Mika Brzezinski, she says it's $7. $7 for a thing of butter. And Scarborough can't believe it. Holy crap, it's $7? I've never heard of such a thing. Absolutely ridiculous. The media in this country is absolutely detached from reality. Now, let me give you another example here in Wyoming. Trotsky. Name one time, one opinion piece, one of his opinion pieces, because they're really not news, they're opinion pieces, but name one of them that's been critical of any of the Redcoats. Just one. All you got to do is find one opinion piece that's critical of Albert Sommers by Trotsky. Now, Albert Sommers or Clark Stith or Steve Harshman or any of those people. Well, you won't find one. Now, try to find one that's critical of a conservative. Well, that's what they do. The media, both in this state and in the country more generally, is entirely biased. And most of what they do is lie to you. Now, today's Friday. So we're 3 days out of the presidential election, and Jim Acosta and Joe Scarborough, and I think I played the Joe Scarborough audio for you yesterday, but let me see if I can find it here. Just give me just a second. It was right after, actually, this part, and I'll get to it, was recorded right after the election on Tuesday evening. Let's see if it's in here. Let's see here. No, it's not there. Let me keep looking. Well, anyway, so the election's over. It's called for Donald Trump, and Joe Scarborough goes on this tear about Donald Trump and how terrible of a person he is. I think it's in this one. Let's see here. Here we go. Joe Scarborough found it. So go ahead and listen to this. This was election night.
We still have an electorate, 70 million plus, that will be voting for a man who said he was going to assassinate for treason the chairman of the Joint Chiefs because he didn't support him on January the 6th, who has said just in recent days he was going to execute Liz Cheney with a firing squad, 9 guns pointed and shooting at her face, a man who has said that he was going to shut down CBS because he didn't like how they edited an interview, a man who said he was going to be a dictator from day one, a man who said he was going to terminate the Constitution.
Okay, all right. That's enough of that. So just take, for instance, the CBS thing, how he says, well, Trump didn't like how they edited a video. They didn't just edit a video. They completely changed the intent. They replaced her answer to a specific question with something that she said later on in the interview. They completely switched around what the vice president said. They copy and pasted exactly what she was trying to say. So for Joe Scarborough or Jim Acosta or any of them to claim that the media is unbiased, they're not, my friends. Journalism, as Sean Hannity says, in the mainstream media anyway, is dead. More after the break. You can listen to Cowboy State Politics live every Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. on the Independence Network. Make sure that you subscribe and follow the Cowboy State Politics podcast. You can do that from the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, or anywhere that you get your podcasts. That way, you'll make sure that you won't miss a single episode of Cowboy State Politics. Cowboy State Politics is sponsored by FreedomGoldUSA.com. They are the working man's gold company. The economy is in turmoil. The stock market pretty much is out of control, and you never know what's going to happen with your finances or your income. One way that you can shore up everything is by investing in gold and silver. Go to freedomgoldusa.com/David for a free interview to discuss your options and find out if gold or silver is right for you. One more time, that's freedomgoldusa.com/David. Welcome back to the program. David Iverson, Cowboy, State Politics Live on the Independence Network, on YouTube, Facebook, X, and now on Rumble. Almost omnipresent. Welcome back to the program, my friends. Open line Friday, 307-374-8989 is the studio line. If you want to be part of the program, go ahead and give me a call, and we'll talk about what's ever on your mind. I have decided that from here on out, we'll set aside Friday for what you want to talk about. You know, in other communities, like Cody comes to mind, when they actually had somebody to do their morning show. If you're a conservative, you are not getting on that radio station, not at all. But I promise you, if there is a liberal that listens to this show, go ahead and call in, man. Just this morning, I sent one of the writers, Amy Edmonds from Wildpile, an invitation to come on Cowboy State Politics, and let's debate what conservatism is. Let's find out, because if you listen to the morning show, Joey and I had a fairly long discussion about the recent Amy Edmonds piece, where now she's saying that, well, all the traditional Republicans, the people that she claimed were, we have Wyoming conservatism, our own conservatism. All of those people now, according to Amy Edmonds, they are the real Reagan conservatives. It's Reagan's conservatism, and that's what we represent. Amy Edmonds can identify however she wants, but that doesn't make it so. She can say that she's a conservative, that she thinks that that her brand of conservatism is the one that we ought to follow, but that doesn't make it Reagan. It doesn't make it any of those people. So anyway, it's Open Line Friday. Go ahead and give me a call, 307-374-8989. And let's first go to Jerry in Rock Springs. Let's see here. Happy Friday, Jerry. What's on your mind?
Well, Mitch McConnell and Barrasso. What do you think about that exchange?
Now, which one were you talking about? You mean just them in general, or do they have a recent exchange today?
Well, no. They talked about it. Oh, it's been a few months ago. I wish I remembered it more about when Mitch McConnell.
Yeah, I see what you're getting at.
Decided to step down.
So let me give you my thoughts on John Barrasso, and thank you for the call, Jerry. I think that John Barrasso is, I don't think that he's all that effective. I've never really been that big of a fan of his. I don't think that he interacts with Wyoming citizens nearly as much as he ought to. I think that he votes for a lot of really, really terrible liberal things. Now, is he better than Mitch McConnell? Well, it would be really hard for him to be worse than McConnell. Mitch McConnell's a disaster. And the incoming Republican majority, I have one piece of advice for them: no more Mitch McConnell, not ever. Now, all of that being said, I think that John Barrasso would be a stretch better than Mitch McConnell. And if you'll pardon the phrase, I think that Barrasso he's the politician we know. I guess that would be my answer.
Right. And I don't really have anything against him, but I've never seen him go against anything Mitch McConnell wanted.
Heck no, man. If you want to know where John Barrasso is, just find Mitch McConnell, and Barrasso will be attached to his right hip.
All right. Well, I thank you for letting me comment.
All right. Have a good day, Jerry. Thanks for the call. All right, it is Open Line Friday, and if you want to be part of the program, go ahead and give me a call, 374-8989. That's 374-8989, just like Jerry's question. Doesn't matter what I'm talking about on Friday. You just go ahead and call in, and we'll talk about whatever you want to talk about. Well, one of the advantages of being president, well, there's a lot of advantages of being president, but one of the big ones is being able to appoint judges. And that's one of the things that Trump did. He did an amazing job with judges. And, going back to the discussion I just had with Jerry from Rock Springs, one good thing that Mitch McConnell did, and I cannot say too much about, I can't give him too many praises because I really don't like the guy. But one good thing that Mitch McConnell did is he pushed through a countless numbers of conservative Republican judges. And I mean, I think that everybody can agree, looking at the last 2 years, that one of the biggest problems we have in this country is judges who do not follow the rule of law. Look at this Chutkin guy, and and all the prosecutions of Donald Trump. No, I mean, Donald Trump still hasn't been sentenced in one of those cases. And if that judge had any love for the United States, if he wanted to follow judicial precedent, if he wanted to follow any sort of precedent, it's that the president of the United States cannot be prosecuted. And he would just dismiss all the charges and drop the trial, or at least postpone them until after Donald Trump is president. But he's not going to do that, apparently. And a president-elect of the United States has to go to court and get sentenced for a crime that's not really a crime, that no one else would be prosecuted for, that no one else would be sentenced for. Well, this judge up in New York, apparently he's going to go through with it. Well, that just underscores the importance of the appointment of judgeships that every president gets to do. And I know that the Biden administration pushed through a tremendous number of very, very liberal judges. And I mean, these are the people that dismiss lawsuits because of lack of standing, that side against parents when they try to hold school boards accountable. They're the folks that if you're a liberal, they'll let you get away with anything. But if you're a conservative and you were anywhere near Washington, D.C. on or around January 6th, you're going to the hole, baby. And we're going to sentence you to the fullest extent of the law. Those are the differences. I mean, we're talking about like real impacts to personal liberty and personal freedom. So I can't overstate, it's impossible to overstate the importance of judges. And, there's a possibility that Trump will be able to nominate a couple of judges to the U.S. Supreme Court during his term. I mean, you never really know when a judge is going to retire, but there are a couple on the bench that are getting up in age, and who knows, they might retire, they might not, but the possibility is there. But let's go to Reuters. In an article entitled "Trump Readies to Name, quote, fearless conservative judges in his second term." Republican President-elect Donald Trump is poised to build on his legacy of reshaping the federal judiciary with nominees who his allies and opponents predict could be even more conservative than the near-record 234 judges that he put on the bench in his first stint in office. With Republicans set to take back control of the Senate, which must confirm judicial nominees, Trump should enjoy an easy path to filling possible vacancies on the U.S. Supreme Court and expected 100-plus seats that will likely open up on lower courts across the nation. Quote, Trump remade the federal judiciary in his first term, and now he has the opportunity to cement that vision for an entire generation, John Collins, a professor at George Washington University Law School, said in an email. A new round of Trump-appointed life-tenured judges would result in a more conservative federal judiciary that would be more likely to cast a skeptical eye on environmental, financial, and other regulations and to uphold Trump's agenda in the face of legal challenges. During his first 4 years in office, let's see here. Yep, all right, so that's just the wrap-up on it. But, quote, I think that Trump's biggest and most consequential accomplishment in his first term was the transformation of the federal judiciary, and I hope he builds on that. Davis, who had worked to help confirm Trump-appointed Supreme Court Justices Neil Gorsuch and Brett Kavanaugh, posted on social media on X on Thursday that anyone wanting his help landing a job during the Trump presidency needs to provide, quote, concrete evidence of your loyalty to Trump. Some of Trump's appointees to the trial courts in his first term could be potential candidates to fill vacancies on key appeals courts, which often have the last word on cases, given how few appeals the Supreme Court hears. Davis has previously cited Florida-based U.S. District Judge Eileen Cannon, a Trump appointee who dismissed the classified documents criminal case against the now incoming president, as the type of fearless judge that Trump should seek to appoint. And it's not just that Eileen Cannon is loyal to President Trump. That's not it at all. It's that she followed the law, that he should have never been prosecuted or never been charged with anything in that dumb documents case. And frankly, the FBI agents that raided his house, they should be the ones that are prosecuted. More after the break. I don't know if you've noticed this or not, but it's hunting season. And one thing that you can be absolutely certain of is while you're tromping around in the boonies, at some point, it's going to snow. A lot. And you definitely want to make sure that you keep your feet nice and toasty warm. The best way that you can do that is to order a pair of socks from the Buffalo Wool Company. They are the warmest socks that I've ever put on my feet. To get you a pair, go to their website, thebuffalowoolco.com. Trust me, you won't be disappointed. Wyoming is one of the most sought-after places to live. There's a lot of people that want to move to our great state. And if you're thinking about selling your house to one of them, you need a real estate agent that you can trust. That agent is Rebecca Bextel at Compass Real Estate. She's lived in Jackson for almost 20 years and has her fingers on the pulse of the real estate market. Last year, she sold almost $25 million worth of property. So if you're thinking of buying or selling, give Rebecca a call. Her phone number is 307-699-3519.
I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day, don't you? Well, I can show you how. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way.
Watch out. This program is only going to get stronger. It's only going to continue to expand. If you thought I was everywhere right now, you just wait. This program I'm building will be the largest force in Wyoming media. Welcome back to the program, my friends. Open Line Friday on Cowboy State Politics Live. If you want to call and be part of the program, the number is 307-374-8989. That's 307-374-8989. If you got something on your mind, go ahead and give me a call. Well, this morning, I was kind of joking around with the lovely Christine, and I was kind of lamenting the fact that I won't get any more Joe Biden sound bites. I mean, I won't have any more stuff like this.
The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters.
Or any of the other crazy things that he says. And, you know, I mean, if you put them on a scale, right, of trying to figure out whose sound bites are the best, you know, I mean, there's very little competition with this.
Oh, I think you got to stop and take a look at what you're doing here. I speak against this because it kind of reminds me of that fairy tale Cinderella.
Yeah, it's pretty hard to compete with that soundbite. But, you know, there have been a bunch of amazing ones. And I don't know if we'll listen to the whole reel because it's pretty long, but just a little walk down memory lane with what we avoided for the next 4 years is in order.
So during Women's History Month, we celebrate and we honor the women who made history throughout history, who saw what could be unburdened by what had been. Prices have gone up, and families and individuals are dealing with the realities of that bread costs more, that gas costs more. And we have to understand what that means. That's about the cost of living going up.
Oh, I think we understand what that means.
That's about having to stress and stretch limited resources. That's about a source of stress for families that is not only
stressful.
economic, but is on a daily level, something that is a heavy weight to carry. It's on your laptop, and it's then therefore up here in this cloud that exists above us, right? It's no longer in a physical place.
No.
For Jamaica, one of the issues that has been presented as an issue that is economic time in which we exist and are present. And to be able to contextualize it, to understand where we exist in the history and in the moment as it relates not only to the past, but the future. You need to get to go and need to be able to get where you need to go to do the work and get home. The significance of the passage of time, right? The significance of the passage of time. So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage. All right.
That's enough of that. I cannot make that stuff up, even if I tried. And, you know, I think that while I'm a little disappointed that there aren't going to be more ridiculous sound bites coming out of the White House, I had to tell Christine this morning, like, but, you know, there are some great sound bites that come from Donald Trump. I mean, I have really missed the way that he said China. I mean, how could you not miss that? But there's going to be a lot of sound bites coming from him and from the media too. I think Jim Acosta, the story we started out the program with, I think that is just the very beginning of the media meltdown. I mean, give it a couple more days and the rest of the big media outlets will start chiming in. When Trump starts pointing to who is going to be in his administration, then the floodgates will open. Well, it's Open Line Friday on the program, 374-8989. Go ahead and give me a call if you want to. Jonathan Turley has a great piece out, and Jonathan Turley, he's on Fox News a lot. He's not really a conservative, and I don't even really think that he's that big a fan of Donald Trump, but he has a great piece out in The Hill, I believe. And let me just read a little bit of it to you, and I quote, "Nearly 2 years ago, I wrote that Democratic prosecutors' lawfare campaign against Donald Trump would make the 2024 election the single largest jury decision in history. Now that the verdict is in, the question is whether prosecutors will continue their unrelenting campaign against the president-elect and his companies. Now, the answer is that it may not matter at all anyway. The election reflected a certain gag sensation for a public fed a relentless diet of panic and identity politics for 8 years. The 2024 election will come to be viewed as one of the biggest political and cultural shifts in our history. It was the mainstream media versus the new media election, the Rogan versus Oprah election, the establishment versus a disassociated electorate election. It was also a thorough rejection of lawfare. One of the things most frustrating for Trump's opponents was that every trial or hearing seemed to give Trump a boost in the polls. As cases piled up in Washington and New York and Florida and Georgia, the effort seemed to move more toward political acclamation than isolation. Now, these cases are now legal versions of the Flying Dutchman, ships designed to sail endlessly but never make port. If there is a single captain of that hapless crew, it is the special counsel Jack Smith. For more than a year, Smith sought to secure a verdict in one of his 2 cases in Washington and Florida before the election. His urgency was seemingly shared by Judge Tanya Chutkan in Washington, but by few other judges or justices. Around 2 a.m., Smith became the lame duck prosecutor. Trump ran on his ending his prosecutions and can cite a political mandate for it. Certainly, had he lost, the other side would be claiming a mandate for these prosecutions. Trump's new attorney general could remove Smith and order the termination of his continued prosecution. That is less of a problem in Florida, where a federal judge had already tossed out that entire case. In Washington, Chutkan, who proved both motivated and active in pushing toward the election interference case, could complicate matters. Under federal rules, it is up to Chutkan to order any dismissal. In the case of a former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn, Judge Emmett Sullivan resisted granting the dismissal sought by the Justice Department, a record that I criticized as both unusual and unwarranted. Chutkan could run the incoming Trump administration around on any dismissal, but in the end, it should succeed in ending Smith's ill-considered indictment. In reality, Smith was not only losing the Florida case, but was likely to be reversed again in Washington due to his refusal to make sufficient changes in his indictment of Trump after the recent immunity decision by the Supreme Court. So, I mean that kind of gives you a flavor of what Jonathan Turley is saying. And I think that as a general principle, and I said this earlier on the program, is that in America, we don't prosecute the president of the United States. It's not possible unless, of course, he's committed some really heinous crime like, murder or something. But for any of these cases that really don't have any judicial backing on them at all, there's no case law that really justifies any of them. Look at the financial case in New York, though that was a state case. That statute had never been used against anyone in that way, and I doubt very seriously that it's ever going to be used again. So this is statutory magic, is what it is. It is taking a statute that is not meant to prosecute someone, flipping it on its head, turning it inside out, and applying it to a case and thinking that it makes sense. It is a case of judicial twister. And that, I think, is what Turley's point is. And even if it weren't, I think this election spells the end of all the prosecutions of Donald Trump, simply because I don't see that there's any way that you could do it logistically, that it would be difficult to, have a president of the United States in court day after day. And I don't think that there's any precedent for that either. But the Democrats aren't in power now anyway. And so any cases that are brought against the president are likely to be thrown out pretty quickly. And I don't see any reason why they wouldn't be. But the main reason why I think that this Jonathan Turley piece carries a lot of weight is that he is not really on the side of Donald Trump. And he never really has been. He's just kind of the guy that's calling balls and strikes and telling you as he sees it. So, I don't think that there's going to be any more prosecutions of Trump, and rightfully so. Now, there should be prosecutions of other people. So if we can prosecute President Trump for the documents case in Florida, why is it then that we cannot prosecute Joe Biden for the exact same thing? Well, you would think that we ought to be able to. But the difference is that conservatives are now in power, the presidency, the House, or the Senate, and it looks increasingly more likely that we'll have the House. But it is not Republicans that try to prosecute our political enemies. That's what the Democrats do. Republicans see the error of their ways. We see that that is one of the chief things that has, in many ways, turned the United States into a nation that acts like a banana republic. And what I mean by that is in other third-rate countries, maybe they're quote-unquote republics, maybe they're autocracies, but you see a lot of the person who gets beat in the election, they're immediately thrown in jail and never to be heard from again. That way they can't threaten to run for another office, and they would never, because, they'd be threatened with prison again. But that's not what happens in the United States. We don't prosecute presidents. Well, up until what the Democrats did this last time, and we're supposed to operate on the rule of law. And for me, that's one of the things that I found most offensive about the Biden-Harris administration is that the rule of law didn't seem to matter at all, and it was across all levels. Even in the state of Wyoming, there were numerous lawsuits that came up that they looked to have a lot of merit to them, and they were dismissed out of hand. No standing, lack of standing. Well, at some point, somebody has standing, and I think it's just a matter of a lot of judges in a lot of different cases looked at the people who were running the government and said, well, I can get away with this. I don't really have to take this case, and I can just continue on. Well, that's what we're going to do after the break, is we will continue on with Open Line Friday. The number is 307-374-8989. Open Line Friday coming up right after this break. You are listening to Cowboy State Politics Live on the Independence Network. You're not going to find a selection of better news, entertainment, and commentary than right here on the Independence Network, with great voices like Joey Carenti from Just Blame Joey, Ken Pendergraft from The Ramble Room, Tom Kelly from Wide Right Turn, and the lovely Christine from The Hair Affair. And of course, my program, Cowboy State Politics, Wyoming's most listened to political program. Also, don't forget to check out the articles section at the website, independencenetwork.us. It's loaded with op-eds, commentary, and news from all around the Cowboy State. You can listen to the Cowboy State Politics podcast anywhere that you get your podcasts. iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, really any of them will work. But the easiest place is just to go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com. There you can find all of the shows, as well as any of the articles that I might bring up during the course of a program. That way, if your name is Joe Biden and you can't remember if you had your pudding today, well, I probably can't help you with that, but I can definitely tell you why you should have never ran for president. And now, back to our program. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics Open Line Friday. I'm your host, David Iverson, Wyoming's conservative voice, documented to be almost always right 99% of the time, no matter what that idiot Shane Rader has to say. Now, today is one of those days I wished I could pipe Fox News into the board, or at least pipe the television into the board so I could let you listen to what's happening today. But the chyron on the bottom of the Fox News screen says that Iran agent tasked with killing Trump is still at large. Are you kidding me? Maybe if the FBI wasn't worried about all of their DEI hires and women that can't put their gun back in their holster, maybe they could actually get some work done and find this guy. Not that long ago, the FBI stopped things before they happened. There would be a plot, somebody would have some crime planned, and the FBI, being the number one law enforcement organization on the planet, would be able to locate that person and arrest them before they did any damage. But now, we can't even spot a guy on a half-inclined roof with a rifle pointed at the president. And even when you can see him in broad daylight, nobody does anything about it. Why can we not get back to doing our jobs? This is mind-blowing. And it's, and now the chyron says, FBI thwarts Iranian plot to kill Trump. Okay, well, if you did that, then where's the suspect? Why isn't he being perp-walked across the TV? And I mean, just absolutely incredible. Yet another thing that Donald Trump needs to fix. Over the break, I was thinking of some of the things that I'm happy we don't have to listen to for the next 4 years. And Tampon Tim Walz is one of them. For example, I could go a lifetime without hearing crap like this ever again. Maybe if I can get it to play. There
we can get out there, reach out, make the case. And for one thing, don't ever shy away from our progressive values. One person's socialism is another person's neighborliness.
There are reasonable things that we can do to make a difference. It's not infringing on your Second Amendment. And the idea to have some of these weapons out there, it just doesn't make any sense.
I spent 25 years in the Army, and I hunt. And I gave the money back, and I'll tell you what I have been doing. I've been voting for common sense legislation that protects the Second Amendment, but we can do background checks. We can do CDC research. We can make sure we don't have reciprocal carry amongst states, and we can make sure that those weapons of war that I carried in war is the only place where those weapons are at.
I think we need to push back on this. There's no guarantee to free speech on misinformation or hate speech, and especially around our democracy.
Can you explain that discrepancy?
Here's my favorite
And
part.
to folks out there who didn't get at the top of this, look, I grew up in small rural Nebraska, town of 400, town that you rode your bike with your buddies till the streetlights come on, and I'm proud of that service.
Oh, man. I'm really glad we don't have to listen to that guy saying, giving official press briefings. Although it would be entertaining, I think it would start to be as irritating as listening to Kamala Harris for 4 years. And thank God we don't have to do that either. Now, yesterday I read you a piece by the New York Times, and it was by Peter Baker, and it was saying that Trump is not this historical aberration of populism that a lot of people are accusing him of, like Amy Edmonds in Wildpile. But there's yet another opinion piece in the New York Times today, and it's entitled "How Trump Won and How Harris Lost," and I quote. Donald Trump's chief pollster, Tony Fabrizio, had seen just about everything in his 3 races working for the controversy-stoked former president. But even he seemed to be braced for bad news. Mr. Trump had just debated Vice President Kamala Harris, repeatedly taking her bait, wasting time, litigating the crowd size, and spreading baseless rumors about pet eating immigrants. That's actually news reports he was quoting there. Mr. Fabrizio had predicted to colleagues that brutal media coverage of Mr. Trump's performance in a debate watched by 67 million people would lift Ms. Harris in the polls. He was right about the media coverage, but wrong about everything else. The first post-debate poll shocked him. Ms. Harris had gained on some narrow attributes like likability, but Mr. Trump had lost no ground in the contest. Quote, "I've never seen anything like this," Mr. Fabrizio said on a call with senior campaign leaders, according to 2 participants. It was yet more proof, as if any more were needed, of Mr. Trump's durability over nearly a decade in politics and of his ability to defy the normal laws of gravity. He overcame seemingly fatal political vulnerabilities, 4 criminal indictments, 3 expensive lawsuits, conviction of 34 felony counts, endless reckless tangents in his speeches, and transformed at least some of them into distinct advantages. How he won in 2024 came down to one essential bet: that his grievances could meld with those of the MAGA movement, and then with the Republican Party, and then with more than half the country. His mugshot became a best-selling T-shirt. His criminal conviction inspired $100 million in donations in one day. The images of him bleeding after a failed assassination attempt became the symbol of what supporters saw as a campaign of destiny. Quote, "God spared my life for a reason," he said at his victory speech early Wednesday, adding, quote, "We're going to fulfill that mission together." At times, Mr. Trump could be so crude and self-indulgent on the stump that aides wondered if he were engaged in an absurdist experiment to test how much aberrant behavior voters would tolerate. But Mr. Trump successfully harnessed the anger and frustration millions of Americans felt about some of their very institutions and systems he will soon control as the country's 47th president. Voters unhappy with the nation's direction turned him into a vessel for their rage. I don't think that that's the case at all. I don't think that voters looked at Donald Trump and said, "I'm pissed off, and Donald Trump will prosecute it for me." No, I don't think that's it at all. I think voters looked at the last 4 years and saw that we are not better off than we were under his leadership, that the economy is not as good as Joe Biden and Kamala Harris say it is, that there is actually a significant problem in this country, and that Donald Trump, as he solved it last time, can solve it this time. I think that's what it was. Quote, "The elites cannot come to grips with how alienated they are from the country," said Newt Gingrich, the former House Speaker and informal advisor to Donald Trump. But more than just broad societal forces were at play. His victory owed, in part, to strategic decisions by a campaign operation that was his most stable yet and was held together for nearly 4 years by a veteran operative, Susie Wiles, who, by the way, is going to be his chief of staff. That was announced yesterday or this morning, I think. Even if the candidate himself was, for much of 2024, as erratic as ever, the Trump team schemed ways to save its cash for a final ad blitz, abandoning a traditional ground game to turn out its voters and relying instead on a relatively small paid, hold on just a second, my friend. Live radio. The studio dog had to go see who was at the front door. I just love live radio. But anyway, before the interruption, we were talking about how the Trump team schemed ways to save cash for a final ad blitz. Mr. Trump relentlessly pushed to define Ms. Harris not just as radically liberal, but as foolishly out of the mainstream. The inspiration, his advisors said, was a memorable Nixon-era saying by the president strategist Arthur Finkelstein: a crook, or in Mr. Trump's case, a convict, always beats a fool. Mr. Trump's aides gambled on mobilizing men, though men vote less than women do, and it paid off. And they gambled on trying to cut into Democrats' typically big margins among Black and Latino voters, and that paid off too. His close-knit campaign team navigated the hacking of top officials' emails by Iranians, constricting security measures by American authorities following 2 assassination attempts, and a final phase that included the use of multiple planes in addition to the one with Mr. Trump's name on it to keep the former president safe. How Mr. Trump won is the story of how Ms. Harris lost. She was hobbled by President Biden's low approval ratings and struggled to break from him in the eyes of voters yearning for a change in direction. She had only 3+ months to reintroduce herself to the country, and she vacillated until the end with how and how much to talk about Mr. Trump. That's not it at all, my friends, and this is where I differ from the New York Times piece. The fatal error that Kamala Harris made is one that she couldn't control. She was unable to talk about her positions in any meaningful sense. She was unable to put together a cogent argument why Americans should vote for her, because for one simple reason, that Kamala Harris is basically an empty vessel. And that's very obvious watching any of her appearances, or her very few appearances on TV and during interviews, that she endlessly sought to find whatever it was that the person interviewing her wanted to hear, because that's what she's done her entire time in politics, even from the time she was a prosecutor all the way up to her attorney general run and being in the Senate. It's very clear, if you look at Kamala Harris' speeches, that she was very much playing to the crowd in just about all of them. Think about the Black Lives Matter shenanigans that went on a couple of summers ago, where she tweeted that she was going to set up or help support a bail fund for those people who were arrested. Think about that. That she actually thought that that was going to be something that resonated with American voters is truly striking. That in some way, somehow, that was going to make her more likable. That voters were going to look at that and say, wow, I really want a president that's going to set up a bail fund for obvious criminals who are burning down a city. Kamala Harris never really had a campaign strategy of her own. And that, coupled with the machine that was the Trump campaign, there was no way that Kamala Harris was going to win this election. Though I have to admit, my friends, that I was cautiously optimistic most of the election. There were a lot of times when crazy things would happen, or Donald Trump would say something that was not exactly politically savvy, or he would slip, or he would start to take the bait in a debate, which, by the way, I do think he did on a number of occasions, talking about crowd sizes and saying ridiculous, crazy things that he hadn't thought through. The thing is, you never go into a debate unprepared. I'm not saying that Trump wasn't prepared. I mean, he did over 900 rallies in the 4 years since he was president. So he was absolutely prepared for public speaking. But debating is something entirely different that you have to prepare for. And you would think that the people that he had around him, Susie Wiles, for example, would have insisted that he prepare formally and be ready for those types of snares that would be laid out in front of him. What he should have said was, I don't really think that matters, Kamala. Can we actually talk about things that do matter to the American people? He could have sidestepped a lot of those things, but he didn't. There were other times during the campaign where different items would come up and I would just shiver. But the truth is, my friends, that he evaded all of them, and now he's going to be the 47th president of the United States. Well, we've come to the end of our program today. Have a good weekend. I'm David Iverson, and I am out of here.